It is a catchy tune, Luke. It is a catchy tune. Hey, guys. Welcome to Aussie Craft Distillers Shooting the Shit. My name is Craig, or Crafty, from Craftworks Distillery. And tonight we're going to be chatting with Holly Clintworth from Bass and Flinders Distillery in Victoria. G'day, Holly.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
How are you tonight?
Very good. Got my gin and tonic in hand, ready to go.
Very nice. Very nice. And the boys are on. So we've got Luke, who is a whiskey drinker, distiller, and IT specialist who holds this whole thing together, this machine that we call Aussie Craft Distillers Shooting the Shit.
Very loosely.
Very loosely. That's an understatement.
It's a very high quality production, as you've all seen.
Cutting edge stuff.
Oh,
No
yeah.
comment. And on my left is Todd, my right-hand man, the Todd. G'day, Todd. How are you?
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
It's a bit wetter. It's a bit wet over here at the moment, but we'll survive.
Yeah, we've had a bit of rain today as well. Bit patchy, so not good when you're trying to mill. You've got your mill poked outside and you're trying to mill and it's starting to rain, so you got to balance things out there. So,
did you get the sideways rain up there?
Yes, did today actually.
That's fun.
Yeah, no, had that. It's pretty full on. Anyway, let's rip into it. So we're going to be talking all things Bass and Flinders tonight, which is going to be really interesting because it's a bit of a different story. And the first thing we do is we're all going to just say what we're drinking because you've got to have a drink when you do these things. So I'll kick it off. I'm keeping it pretty straightforward tonight, keeping it light. And I'm just going with the Starwood Twofold.
I thought that's what it was.
Yep, which is a very nice, approachable, easy whiskey. So
it's a good It's a good entry to whiskey drinking, isn't it? For people who haven't had a good whiskey before, or their experience with whiskey in the past has just been, I hate that. It's a good way to get them in, I think. It's approachable.
It's very, very approachable, yeah,
and affordable.
And affordable too, absolutely. Okay, Holly. So, what are you drinking tonight?
I have here. I've got a Heartbreak. Oh, there we go. Heartbreak Pinot Noir gin of ours. Heartbreak Pinot Noir gin and tonic. Yeah, a little bit sweeter. Obviously, one of those great based gins. Bit of dehydrated orange in there as well.
Nice.
Very nice indeed. All right.
Yeah, no.
And what do you got, Todd? You on whiskey or gin tonight?
Well, I'm going to start off with gin because this is one of the first.
Oh, look!
Group of
It's
people that
almost
I've actually got a bottle of this stuff already. So.
So you got that when we visited Holly's distillery back in March, yeah?
Yes.
So
March
through to September, got through that bottle.
Yeah, no, that was.
I think it was April. Yeah.
I think it was April actually. Yeah.
I had a few other ones as well. They're dust, but still got that one kicking on. It's really nice.
They never last long at your house, do they?
No, sadly.
All right, and Luke, what are you on?
Well, I currently have in my glass because I was just came in late to our prep for the session in the Whiskey List Bakery Hill tasting. So nice. I'm currently on their Double Wood, and then I'll move on to the Whiskey List Special Cask, Muscat Cask, which is quite flocky. Can't really, I don't know whether you can see that, but there's a lot of bits there. And then the Bakery Hill peated to finish off.
The trifecta.
We'll see whether I get through all of them.
Very nice. The Bakery Hill trifecta.
Absolutely.
All right.
It'll be good.
All right. Well, let's kick it off then. So, for those who don't know Bass and Flinders, and I imagine most of the people that are on tonight would know Bass and Flinders, why don't we start right at the beginning, Holly? Why don't you give us a bit of an insight into how you got into distilling spirits and the story of Bass and Flinders? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, sure. Well, to start with my story, I got to go back a little bit earlier to my dad's story. So my late father, Wayne, he was one of the founders of Bass Flinders Distillery in 2009. So we've been around for a little while now. And I guess the real inspiration behind setting up Bass and Flinders stemmed from where we are. So based on the Mornington Peninsula, wine producing region surrounded by vineyards, and he saw an opportunity because there was no distilleries on the peninsula at the time, and often over in European countries where there's wine and where there's fruit, there's often distilleries that pop up and turn that leftover produce into a local spirit. And so he had the bright idea to work with grapes and turn grapes into brandy. Basically, brandy was the dream and the goal behind setting up Bass and Flinders. And I guess he really wanted to take on the finest of the French brandies. He wanted to try and make a great Australian brandy to rival the very best of the French, so the cognacs and the armagnacs and so forth. So so that was 2009, and back then they invested in a 300-litre alembic pot still, so very small, and we've literally been using that same 300 pot still up until this year when we bought a second-hand ex-cognac still, but I'll maybe get to that a little bit later. But when he set up the distillery, he was new, and in order to learn the craft, he engaged a master distiller who had trained with Remy Martin, and he brought this master distiller out to train him and to learn the ropes. And for many nights at the start, he actually set up a hammock and slept next to the pot still because he was terrified that something would happen. So he literally spent all his days and nights in the distillery trying to perfect the craft and make the eau de vie. So basically what we do that makes us quite unique is that we distill wine from scratch, turn that into a grape-based spirit or an eau de vie, also a non-neutral spirit, and we use that non-neutral spirit to either barrel age and turn into brandy, or use the same non-neutral spirit to make gin. And that's what makes our gins particularly unique, because obviously most distilleries use a neutral spirit to make the gin. So we use the eau de vie kind of like an extra botanical in the gins. So that's probably our biggest difference. And then I guess from 2009, started distilling, started to put some spirit down into barrels, and like many whiskey distilleries out there that are first established to make whiskey, but in the meantime, while the whiskey is maturing, they make gin. That same story happened to us. So while our brandy was maturing, we started making gin and we started making liqueurs, and we were quite lucky that we did that because it was probably only a couple of years prior to the big gin boom happening, and we already had products in the market. So it was good timing.
Right.
And and then I stepped on board to take over from my dad in 2016 and run the business and learn the ropes from him. Learned everything I know today from him and took on his passion, I guess, and grew the business to where it is today. So, that's our story.
Wow.
So you you come at it quite a different way, haven't you? You know, taking, as you said, a non-neutral approach, which means you must have very good relationships with winemakers and fostered them over the many years, I bet.
Yeah, we do. And we source we try and source as much produce from the peninsula as we can, but obviously peninsula grapes are very expensive. So some of our premium brandy has peninsula Chardonnay, but we also source Shiraz and Chardonnay from central Victoria. And that particular winemaker we've been working with right from inception, right from 2009. And so he's got our specifications on acidity and pH and sugar levels and all that. And we've got a really good relationship with him. And that's the most important part, making sure that the winemaker knows exactly what you're looking for and can produce to spec so that you can get the characteristics that you want in your eau de vie.
And then obviously there's a lot of seasonal, or can be a lot of seasonal variation in the grapes as well. How do you find that ends up affecting your end spirit?
Yeah, so obviously when it comes to brandy, that's not a problem. Every single barrel differs, every vintage differs. There's a lot of difference, and that's what, the importance of blending. But when it comes to gin, very, very good point you raise, because this is something that we have to work really hard to manage. Because interestingly, when it comes to gin, people expect gin to be consistent with every bottle they buy. And for us, because our eau de vie is different every vintage, we end up having to kind of R&D the same gin recipe every year to balance out the differences in the eau de vie year on year. And that, we could use the same gin 10 recipe one year and then do it again the next year, and the pepperberry will be way too pronounced and we'll have to back that off, and that's just the change in the eau de vie. So it adds a lot more layers of complexity to produce a consistent gin.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot of extra work. But you manage it. Yeah, that's cool.
And that's just been a learnt skill as you've gone along, or is it training based? Would you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's something we kind of had to feel our way through. You do a small batch, you do the next year's batch, and you think, gee, this tastes really different. Why is that? And you compare the eau de vie, and they're very different. And so it's just fine tuning. And so that's something that we've become really good at. It's a shame, because I think if people were more interested in experiencing the variance between vintages in gin, it's not really a thing. So I think it would be very hard to convince someone to be interested in that. But the vintages are the great part of making brandy, but not necessarily when making gin. But it's something exciting for us, and it keeps it interesting.
Yeah. Do you keep your own little stock of the different vintages, or it's all business? Let's get it consistent, and it all goes into that.
Well, I mean, by the time we do all the tweaking, it's pretty consistent. But we definitely do have a backlog of kind of sample eau de vie, and tasting those vintage eau de vie is really interesting to go through, for sure. Yeah.
Do you base that consistency off an old stock of eau de vie rather than what last year or the year before was? Like, how far back are you going for your baseline of that?
I guess I guess when I started learning with my dad, I got a feel for the style of the gins, and we do a lot of gins. We do over 10 different gins. I got a really good feel in my head for what each gin was created to be. For the gin 10, it's supposed to be orange forward, pepperberry, and cassia, and there's always, because we're small batch and artisanal distillery, there's always going to be variances anyway. But as long as that end product is true to what the concept of that gin was created to be, that's, it's got that balance. Because the vintages can throw things out of balance, and you've got to find that balance. You've got to make sure that those key botanicals are at the forefront, and that's kind of where we are happy to land. Yeah,
cool.
Well, that's different. You've got a big fan here,
Ali. Hey, Ali.
Yeah.
I'd say she's a fan, yeah.
Yeah.
And she makes all right gin as well.
She makes incredible gin. Some of the world's best, I believe.
Yeah, no, they're doing all right, and they're about to release their first rum too very shortly. They're getting very close to that.
Looking forward to that.
Was that a collab with you, Crafty?
No.
Oh, that the whiskey. No,
That was the rum is a passion of theirs. They just needed time. But with Nick and Ali, we did a barrel aged gin.
That's right. You did barrel aged gin.
Yeah, which was very cool actually. It was fascinating to watch because Ali had a different perspective on it. So I was coming at it from a whiskey standpoint, right? So here is a whiskey barrel. Let's make a gin so we can have a barrel aged gin. She treated the barrel as a botanical, which was very, very cool. We had smoked juniper in the recipe, which just accentuated the sherry notes that were coming off the cask. So it was very, very, very clever. So yeah, that was all Ali.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's how we treat our non-neutral grape spirit as well. We treat the characteristics of the eau de vie as an extra botanical, and also texture. It adds kind of a viscosity and a different texture to a neutral spirit as well.
Yeah, right. I'd imagine there's a lot of difference in the oiliness and you could have a really thick, sticky one year and then a lot lighter and lighter, I guess, the next year. That certainly would add an extra layer of challenge to the consistency of it.
Yeah, I mean, we try and keep those. I mean, with the wine specs, we try and keep certain things fairly. We don't want to play around too much with that consistency. We use a Shiraz-based eau de vie for the gin, and it's quite a low tannin Shiraz, also because we don't want it to kind of get stuck and burnt inside the still. But we keep those kind of wine specs as consistent as we can, but then the flavor characteristics and just the overall texture of a non-neutral spirit, it does tend to be, in my opinion, a bit smoother, a bit rounder, a bit more viscous. And it's got that fruit character. So that's always, of course, that's going to add, an extra kind of botanical element to the gin.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And then you go and throw ants into one.
What was that?
And then you go and throw ants into one of them.
Yes.
Angry ant.
Yes. Angry ant gin. Yep. Whole lot of ants. Many, many, many ants. Ant pheromones, actually. The beautiful story behind that one is so Woolleen Station is over in Western Australia, and we first heard about the story of Woolleen Station on Australian Story. I think there's been about 3 episodes on TV now. And this property has been regenerated to basically bring it back to its natural state because there's a lot of cattle and erosion. And David Pollock and his wife Frances are doing incredible things on that property. And when we called them up to find out if there was any amazing native botanicals we could have a play around with and distill, they reeled off a whole bunch of them: mulla mulla, currant bush, purple vetch, native lemongrass. And they said, we've got all these ants. We've got incredible ant hills all across the property. Maybe there's something you can do with that. And we discovered that these native gravel ants are actually an indigenous food source. And it was their alarm pheromones that they release when you gotta kind of stomp around on their ant hills, get them a bit angry, and they get a bit agitated. They all come out and they charge, and they release this very aromatic, kind of citrusy, musky pheromone. And we were able to capture the pheromone and use that as a botanical.
How do you that seems like a lot of pissing off ants to capture? It's
quite terrifying. It's very terrifying. And once you've got that smell up your nostrils and, you know, on your hands if you're capturing the ants. You can't get rid of it.
Wow.
It's a very, very strong smell.
How do you capture ant pheromone? What does that process look like? I just imagine you're out there in your gumboots stomping away on this anthill trying to piss them off.
Yeah.
No, you're just swiping the air to capture the pheromone. Or what are you doing?
We got to definitely make them angry, very angry, hence the name, Angry Ant Gin. And look, the nice PG way to put it is that we drop them into our eau de vie and we wash their little bodies and we capture the pheromones that way.
Right.
But
So that they have a bit of a spirit bath.
Have a bit of a spirit bath, and some
Wouldn't
may
we all
argue
love
that
to do
there are. Yeah, I mean it's not a bad way to go. I must admit that a few ants are harmed in that process, but
Right.
it is going to a good cause. So it's the one gin that we do have to declare, because we do get questions about if all of our gins are vegan or not, and that one is not.
One's not vegan friendly. Yeah.
Yeah, but the really amazing thing about the pheromones is, because we worked with an entomologist from Melbourne University, and he was telling me that these gravel ants are actually found all over Australia. They're not native to any one state, but wherever they are found, they graze on the botanicals of their surrounds, and those botanicals then infuse the aromas of their surrounds in their pheromones. And so using the ant pheromones from the same property that we also source all these other indigenous and native botanicals, it's this really beautiful kind of circle of tying everything together from that one location. So that's the really incredible thing about that.
That's some amazing ant terroir.
Yeah.
Wow. There's an interesting range for you. The ants of Australia.
The ant collection.
Yeah. Like it. Great idea.
Get them pissed and get them pissed. Yep. Wow.
So, Holly, you said you had what 10 gins in your portfolio. That's a lot of gins, isn't it?
Yeah, some of them are seasonal, but it is a lot. It is a lot. You do have a hell of a lot of dried and fresh botanicals banked up at the distillery to draw on. But yeah, I mean, we try and do some seasonal stuff, and we try and work with local producers on those seasonal gins. So we've done a black truffle gin before with Red Hill truffles, and the truffle dog Thomas goes and finds the truffles for us. And we've done a Genevieve gin.
Black as that?
Oh no, it's not black. No, we don't actually. It's not black. It's clear. It's clear. Is that a truffle gin?
That's the Newcastle distilling, the Mist.
Black truffle gin.
Black truffle gin.
That is black. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I left it in my glass for a couple of days, and that glass is black now.
Wow.
It's got Swivington, is it?
I don't know. We'll have to ask him. I can't remember how he makes it so black, but it is black as. Yeah, very dark.
Yeah. You'd have to use a lot of truffles to get it that black, I reckon.
I think there's a color in there. I think there is.
Yeah.
It's an added color of some sort. But I can't remember if he actually disclosed it or not. We have to rewatch.
I don't think he said which color it was.
No.
Or what the color was. But yeah, there's definitely a color in there. Something in there that makes it black. So yours is a clear one, so you just go for the truffle hit. Yeah,
just do the vapor infusion. Yep. And work with kind of creamy botanicals, calamus root, to add a really kind of rich texture and flavor to it as well.
Right. And before we move on too far past the ants, how many ants do you use in a batch?
I get asked that all the time. You know what? I haven't sat there and counted them because it's really hard. Because
You just
when
1, 2,
no,
3.
we're talking big clumps, and when they get angry, they clump together. And if you wanted to count them, you'd have to get tweezers and you'd have to pull them apart. And we have done a few limited releases where we put an ant in the bottle and sell that, but it's hard. You have to tweezer them apart, and you have to make sure it's still got its arms and its head, and it's 100% full ant. so I don't know how many we use, but
So
we
a handful or a bucket.
So we send like 500 ml bottles of our eau de vie over to WA, and they fill them back up with ants. So we will get 6 bottles of ants plus eau de vie, and that'll last us about a year. Yeah.
Wow. So there's a lot of pheromones in those little ants.
There's a lot of pheromones and very strong, very potent stuff.
Wow. Does it end up like just coating the still, and like how does it affect other runs that you do then after that?
No, that one's actually a post ad. We add that in after separately. It's a steep. We post ad that one. Yeah. It's
that would be a nightmare to clean.
Oh yeah, no. We got to keep that stuff separate.
So the vegans can be assured there are no ant remnants in any of the other ones at all. No ant residue.
Yes.
All right. Okay. I love that so much. I'm gonna have to buy a bottle.
It's a beautiful gin, actually. It's got really strong native lemongrass, and that's probably my all-time favorite native botanical. Lemongrass. It kind of have any of you guys tried it? It looks a lot like straw. It doesn't look anything like the lemongrass you get in the supermarket.
Right. Okay.
And when you crush it in your fingers and smell, it's very kind of sweet lemon, musk, citrus kind of. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Well, I'm going to look forward to tasting it. So I'm not going to be able to help myself. I'm going to end up ordering it now.
So with your developments of various gins, it's a long, involved process, isn't it? And it starts on a bench. Well, it starts with a concept first, doesn't it? When you talk to other gin distillers, do you find there's similarity in the way that gin distillers approach their methodology to develop their gins, or do you find there's just so many different ways to come about it to make a gin?
That's an interesting point. I don't think I've ever had that conversation with other distillers about how they approach making their gins. But I mean, I guess the interesting thing is we know so many distillers with very unique backgrounds. We know scientists, chemists, lawyers, accountants. My background was in marketing. I think just on your life experience, the way you approach creating a gin will probably be very different. But for me, the way I approach creating a gin is I'll start with a concept in my head, or potentially a botanical or two that I'd love to have a play with. So, for instance, our Orient gin is inspired by my family's Chinese heritage. My grandmother's Chinese, and it's got Chinese red date and Sichuan pepper and mandarin. And I always wanted to put Sichuan pepper in a gin, and so that was kind of the starting point. And then for me, the way I come up with my gin recipe is I'll do individual distillates first. I'll blend the balance, and then once I'm happy with it, we'll work backwards and we'll work out how to do the single shot from there. And we'll kind of, obviously, because it's slightly different methods, you'll have to tweak the recipe a little bit, but that's kind of how I approach it. And then with the maritime gin, that was more of a concept of wanting to come up with a gin that encapsulated flavors of the Mornington Peninsula. So it's not a Navy gin. It's called maritime gin though, and it is made with locally foraged kelp and samphire and saltbush to give a real kind of salty, salt air kind of vibe to it. So that was a concept as well. That's how I start, I suppose.
Okay, that's Is
that different to what you've come across?
No, it's similar. My understanding is it starts with a concept, and then it starts with a couple of botanicals, individual distillates, and then the blending of it. And it's to me, it's very akin to cooking, and getting that balance right, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of people think that gin is just about flavor and aroma, but there's also the texture that some botanicals can create. So, calamus root gives a real creaminess, and cinnamon actually creates a real smoothness. And so you're using flavor and aroma, but also texture when it comes to creating gins, which is really important.
Yeah, wow. There's a lot to it, isn't there? Absolutely. So you started fairly early in the piece with the explosion of gin in Australia. What has surprised you with the growth of gin from the early days to where it is now, and where do you think it's going in the future?
I guess I've been amazed at how many new gins are coming onto the market just kind of in the last 1 to 2 years. It's definitely kind of it's kind of started out and just skyrocketed. And then you think when we set up Bass and Flinders, I think there was only about 30 distilleries in the country, and today there's about 330. And if you think we make 10 gins, and obviously not all of the 330 make gin, but even if 3/4 of them did and they each made 5, that's a hell of a lot of gin. But it sounds like a lot for those within the industry, but then you look at how much local spirit is consumed compared to imports, and it's still absolutely minuscule. So I guess what surprises me, I mean, maybe not surprising, but it's interesting to see, and especially kind of post-COVID, I think we're finding gin is becoming a lot more localized, local flavors that represent where that distillery is based, much more so, I think that's a really great trend to see, because it just means that as a distillery that has a venue, people can travel to all different distilleries and actually taste the flavors of that location in a gin. So I think that's an interesting trend. And then I think the start of the grape infused gins, that's been a really fantastic one, and I think that's one that is just also starting to take off in the industry. Obviously, Four Pillars with their Bloody Shiraz, they were they pretty much created this category, and now we're seeing that we've got the Pinot Noir gin, Never Never Guy's got their gin ash, and we're starting to see white grape varieties in gin as well, which I think is really interesting. So I think there's a lot more to be explored there still, and that's going to be pretty exciting as well.
And you said it's sorry, I was just going to say, so it is a new category in regards to gin and working with wine.
I think Australia has really led the charge. Globally, I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure Bloody Shiraz was kind of the first of its kind. And internationally, I think there might be a few popping up. I think there was maybe one in Spain, but it's very rare. It's not a common style of gin in the UK. It's a very, very new concept as far as I'm aware. This taking a gin, infusing, steeping grapes, or however the way we do it is a little bit different. We get the grapes and we allow the grapes to ferment, and then we kind of fortify that fermentation. We cut that fermentation with our gin, but you know, it's very much a trend that I believe started really in Australia, and Australia's kind of pitching that to the world, and it's forced spirits competitions to create new categories for it.
It's a very Australian thing too, isn't it? Just try something different, and it builds from there. And with a name like Bloody Shiraz, I mean that was just marketing gold, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the really exciting thing about making spirits in Australia. You know, we don't have the same very strict line after line after line after line definitions of exactly what a gin needs to be. You know, the EU's got their 3 definitions. Some might argue that the Australian definition needs to be stricter, but as it is, it means that there's a lot of room for that innovation, and that's how we see things like great gins get created, which is super, super exciting.
Well, okay.
Is there anything that you think is being overused in Australian gins?
Don't say,
Hey?
don't say juniper.
Juniper, no. Must be used in large or small proportions. I think overused is probably a strong word, but there's definitely been trends. There's definitely been, I think, the lemon myrtle trend. That was definitely one. I think pepperberry, you know, that's another one. You know, those botanicals, those native botanicals are popular, as well as strawberry gum. I think those 3 are probably the most popular native botanicals because they taste amazing. So I think those 3, in my opinion, will probably be the most common native botanicals you will find in every distillery in some way, shape, or form. But
and then, is there anything that you think should be used more, like that's very understated in the Australian botanicals? Or is that going to be a best kept secret?
Native lemongrass is my fave, and I don't know of anyone using native lemongrass, and we just came about it because Woolleen Station told us that there was a heap of it on their property, and we discovered that it was this incredible native botanical. But I think, you know, that just goes to show that there's so many other native botanicals out there yet to be discovered, and, you know, the more that can be discovered and shared, the better, because there's some incredible flavors out there that are really reflective of our native outback.
Yeah, definitely. I think you've proven that with stomping on anthills, and
it's a process that it's a little bit traumatic when you partake for the first time, I must say.
Still got PTSD.
It's all right. I still drink the gin.
All that matters.
And then we've got brandy. So you were saying that brandy was where it all started. It just took time to make the brandy. And you released your brandy. How long ago did you release your first brandy?
Yeah, so we actually put our first commercial volume and barrels down in 2011, and we've released that in 2015. And it was minimum 5-year-old. Must have been start of 2011, end of 15, something like that. And so it's Ochre, this one. I got this one here. Ochre is our flagship brandy, and our oldest barrel is 2011, and we decided to start with a premium brandy. We always wanted to do things right, and we wanted to do things well, and we wanted to focus on quality. And so we felt it wasn't until 5 years in barrel that brandy was ready to be released, and it was only about 1.5 years ago that we released a younger brandy. So we did the $230 bottle of brandy first, and then we did the $120 bottle of brandy a couple of years ago. And I guess, you know, the expensive ochre is very much for a niche market, people who potentially love drinking cognac and love that premium kind of craft element. And then the 2-year-old we really created to kind of we're really passionate about helping change people's perceptions when it comes to brandy, because I think that people still kind of see brandy as something their grandma drinks, something that goes in the Christmas pudding, and that's why we also did a spiced Christmas brandy to have a bit of fun with that. But the younger brandy was really released to help people not be scared about brandy, have fun with it, put it in cocktails, mix it, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, I mean, the whole ethos, everything that we do at Bass and Flinders started with making brandy, and that's why we use the eau de vie for the brandy and for the gin. Yeah.
And you spent some time in France, didn't you? A few years ago, you travelled around.
Yes. I've been there a couple of times. Met a few distilleries. It's interesting. People would assume that the French don't like to tell outsiders what they do and don't like to share their secrets, but I think they were just interested that someone from Australia wanted to talk to them about the technical aspects, and they were really happy to have a chat. And I think they don't really see Australia as any kind of threat. I think they probably should, but they don't. But at the end of the day, they have very strict rules and regulations around, they must start. I think their distillation season starts in October and it ends by the end of Feb. And they've got government officials that go around and check that the distillation has finished, and they check, how much heads, how much hearts, seconds, tails, make sure that they're distilling the right wines, all sorts of parameters that they have in place that actually really restricts innovation in cognac. And when I came along and I said, have a try of my 100% Chardonnay based brandy, matured in ex-cognac barrels, we distill all year round, or we can distill all year round. What do you think? And their minds were blown. They didn't even comprehend that all these other ways of producing brandy were possible, because they've got those limitations. So I found them to be very forthcoming with information and really helpful. And off the back of my second quick trip over there, we visited a still manufacturer, and we got chatting, and we have been working with them for the last couple of years to source a secondhand cognac still. It was still quite an expensive still, but it wasn't nearly as expensive a new one. But it's a very beautiful, ancient looking thing, and they've managed to refurbish the elements that had kind of worn out. And so we just this year have installed our 1,700 litre secondhand cognac barrel, and that overtakes our 300 litre pot still, which is really exciting because, we'll distill 40,000 litres plus of wine a year on that 300 litre pot still, and it's it's an absolute nightmare.
It's slow process, yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. It's just so so labour intensive. And 1,700 litres is still considered small in cognac. It's just going to be a lot more efficient for us. And when it comes to distilling wine, it's so important to distill it, quickly, so that you capture that freshness and you maintain that freshness of the wine. And the longer it takes you to do, you start to lose some of those aromas and characters. And so in cognac, what they do is they do 2 first distillations and then 1 second, and then 2 first and then 1 second. But for us, we have to do all our first to get that wine distilled into low wines, and then the second. So yeah.
We've had a question come in from William Rule. Have you found much difference in the aging process between the El Nino drought years and the last few wet years?
Not that I could put my finger on, to be honest. I mean, we do tend to lose a fair bit of we lose volume each year, but I think that's just got to do with the fact that our warehouse temperature fluctuates more than anything. I mean, certainly the El Nino affects the grapes and the vineyards and the the volume of wine that we can have access to. That our winemaker's telling us that we're probably going to get half the amount of volume that we want in the coming vintage, which is a bit disappointing, but we just have to kind of take what we can get. So I think it's mostly in the vineyard that really affects us the most. Yeah.
And so then what do you do then if you're only going to get half your volume? What do you do? You've got half a year.
Yeah. Well, we decide whether we want to source some Chardonnay from another vineyard. We've only ever worked with Chardonnay, but there is opportunity to trial some different grape varieties, which we've been thinking about. So, I guess it could free up distillation space for trialing a few other things.
Yeah, the constant battle of farming in Australia, I guess.
Yeah.
Wouldn't want to do it. Would not want to do it. Full respect to our farmers who are whatever they're farming. God, that must be such a hard job.
Yeah, absolutely. Heartbreaking as well. And especially in the wineries at the moment, with the export to China, I think I was reading that it's plummeted to 95% of what they were doing pre the trade wars. So I think they've got a lot on their plate at the moment, the winemakers.
Does that give you sort of any opportunity then to take up some of that slack if they're seeing all this grape sitting there, not knowing what to do with it?
Yeah.
Does that mean boom for you potentially?
It potentially does mean access to more volume, but then, we've had that in conjunction with the La Nina. But talking to another winery the other day, they actually said, we were terrified when the trade wars started happening. We weren't sure what we were going to do, but because of the weather, we didn't actually have enough anyway, and it worked in our favor because we could still support all of our wholesale customers in Australia without having to cut anyone off. So, interesting how that kind of played out.
Yeah, convenient. Lucky. Wow. So who's doing the distilling day to day? Are you in there on the still every day?
Not every day. I am in there some days, but we've also got a production manager and a production assistant. So at the moment, we kind of are rotating the distillation of the Shiraz low wines into hearts, and that's kind of
So I imagine you're running pretty well around the clock to get through it all.
When we do the first distillation, yes, that's a bit of a scramble to kind of pump that through the still and turn that into low wines. But once we've done that, the second distillation, the hearts, we can kind of take the foot off the pedal a little bit. It's not. Yeah. And we just kind of chip away.
How long's that first distillation process? Are you talking days, weeks? How long are you on the go for?
40,000 litres on a 300-litre pot still, 8-hour batches. Wow. Talking about 9 months from wine through to eau de vie at the moment. When we, so we're just finishing off this vintage, and then next vintage we'll be starting to use the cognac still. And that will just kind of drop the time down to about a fifth. and it just means that we can make more spirit, because we were really at our limits. Because if you get too far into the year, you can't take wine after a certain time in the year because it's just not fresh. So it was limiting. It was limiting working on a 300-litre pot still.
And as you said, it gives you a lot more time to do other things, doesn't it?
Yeah, clears up some space to have a play around with some other styles and some other products potentially. Yeah.
Anything you can tell us about? Anything you're wanting to dip your toe into? Well,
we have done a small run of apple brandy. It's currently maturing because the Mornington Peninsula originally was filled with apple orchards. There's a whole lot of cool stores around the peninsula, and Mock Cidery, they've got all their beautiful apples on the property. We got the apple juice from them, and Dan, our production manager, he was able to turn the apple juice into cider, and so we've done our first batch of that, and that's maturing at the moment. So I'd love to play around with lots of different fruits. There's so much on the peninsula. There's cherries, there's strawberries. That would be cool.
Yeah, certainly a lot of opportunity down there. And I'm just looking at your website with your venue there.
Yeah.
That's very impressive. How long have you been in there for?
Yeah, so our venue is in Dramana, but when we first set up in 2009, we actually started out in Red Hill. So we've kind of come from very humble beginnings, tiny rundown tin shed, freezing, going in there to distill, 10 p.m. at night. It was in the middle of winter. It was pretty horrific at times, but I'm sure you know
that
about
sounds
that.
Like Crafty's world.
Yeah.
I was going to say there's hope for Crafty yet.
Yeah. Tin shed, cold, lake distills,
It's all about the boots. You just got to make sure you've got rubber-soled boots, and then it's fine. You can do anything as long as your feet are warm. But yeah, so we started in the back of a winery in Red Hill, and we just leased a tiny space. And when my dad was first starting out, he had a little round tabletop that he was selling gin off from their winery, and he was really chuffed if he sold 1 or 2 bottles on the weekend, kind of thing. And they gave us that space in exchange for us helping out, serve their tables. So that was kind of how we rolled for the first couple of years. And then over the years, we started to grow, and I think that location that we started out in Red Hill, we were really lucky because we were right on the winery trail on Red Hill Road, so just down the road from Polperro. And often wine tours would kind of drive past and then do a U-E and come back because they saw a distillery, and all day they'd been drinking wine, and so they'd come in and they'd be like, oh wow, it's so great to be able to drink something different today. And so we got a lot of kind of flow on traffic that way in our old venue. And the benefit of the old venue was, we were overlooking vineyards, some of which we had harvested some Chardonnay from and turned into our brandy. So it was a beautiful location to start and to kind of help tell our story. But then eventually we outgrew that space. We had 2 5,000-litre tanks in one side of the room, and we had the still in the corner, and we had the masterclass tables, and we had the bar. And so, we'd have the masterclass running, and then a group of hens would rock up, and it was really hard to kind of manage everything. And some people were out the back bottling and watching people getting rowdy, drinking their G&T. So we kind of ran out of space in late 2018, in December 2018, and then we relocated to the Dramana Industrial Estate, which is where we are now. So when we first moved there, we were a little bit worried because we were moving away from the wineries, and even though the wineries probably wouldn't want to admit this, we feel quite connected to wineries and the wine region. and moving into an industrial estate, I guess it is quite normal for a distillery, but for us, we wanted to keep that link. But we found it's a different vibe in the industrial estate. It's actually really exciting because in the industrial estate, there's also rum distillery, Jimmy Rum, a couple of breweries. There's a candle making place. There's seafood, a whole lot of different crafts, artisanal businesses, all starting to band together to create kind of a tourism hub where we are. So so that the venue that we're in kind of got purpose built for us. We are in the industrial estate, but we're on the corner overlooking green pastures, so you can almost pretend that you're not in the industrial estate. But yeah, it's a good spot. It's a very good spot.
Yeah, nice. Very nice.
No, it's a beautiful distillery.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Looking through the photos, and it looks really lovely. Very lovely. I'll have to get down there.
Yeah, well, when you guys came, Crafty, you wouldn't have seen the cognac still was. It was literally 2 weeks away. I was really disappointed. It arrived 2 weeks after you guys all came and visited. So you'll all have to come down and see it. It's my pride and joy.
Has it been named?
Not yet. You got any ideas?
No, I'll leave that for you. I don't want to come up with a name and you use it and I get blamed. No.
We're currently calling it Big Red until we find something else. It's this beautiful big red, traditional looking. Yeah. It kind of looks like the TARDIS from Doctor Who.
Awesome.
Chewy.
Hooey.
No, Chewy.
A Tui.
Yeah, Big Red is a chewing gum. So, and chewy. So just put it out there.
Go on.
It's a cinnamon gum, isn't that one, Chewy? The big red cinnamon. Yeah.
So you wear many hats in your distillery, Holly. Do you have anything in particular which you really enjoy? You gravitate towards it, or are you happy just balancing all the balls in the air?
Yeah, I do wear many hats. Right, most of us who run small businesses have to wear many hats. There's certainly some things that I'm not good at, and that would be the IT stuff, and there's certain things that I would like to outsource one day. I do love the R&D of coming up with new products and new recipes. Creating the Christmas brandy was really fun, and I really wanted to create kind of like an Aussie riff on a Grand Marnier, so we came up with our Madame Marmalade, which is a brandy-based orange liqueur. Those are the things that I love doing, and sometimes I just get so distracted with all the other things. But yeah, I think I wouldn't have it any other way. It's something that I love. I love going to work and wearing all the hats every day. So a lot of fun.
And the bar side of it, the tasting bar side of it, do you enjoy that?
That's one hat that I don't wear. I leave that to our head bartender. And one thing I will admit is that I'm very bad at making cocktails. I'm very good at talking about the product. Yeah. So when they're short on staff, I'm more than happy to be running the tastings out and talking to people and telling them about the spirits. But I remember when we were in our old site and I jumped behind the bar and I was making a Negroni, and I'm very ashamed to admit this, but I was shaking the Negroni and I got scolded by the bartender saying, "Holly, what are you doing? You do not shake a Negroni." And I have never shaken a Negroni since then, but I tend to shy away from making cocktails because I'm not very good.
It's a skill in its own right.
It is. It's a skill. It absolutely is. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be a big part of distilleries nowadays, isn't it? You do have to have a a proper bar set up and have the expertise on putting cocktails together and that side of it. So, which is really a separate business in its own right, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, because we had our cellar door or distillery door aspect of the business installed in, it wouldn't have been until about 2016 or so, and just when gin was starting to pick up. And back then we were really fresh into the distillery door service and concepts and that kind of thing. And our cocktail menu consisted of a Negroni and a Martini and a Cosmopolitan and, all the classics. And since moving to the new venue and actually finding some incredible head bartenders and incredible skilled bartenders, they have brought to the table some really amazing cocktails using, native botanical syrups and all that kind of stuff. And it's definitely a place I like to be on a Sunday, drinking the Bass Flinders cocktails, because they taste amazing. But yeah, we've definitely learnt that you've got to deliver an amazing experience to be able to best showcase the amazing products that you make. You've got to be able to show people how to drink them. The cocktails have to look amazing so that people can post them on their social media. And that's something that we've learnt along the way, I suppose. And it comes with having the right people with the right skill sets as well, the bartenders that can create those amazing flavors in the cocktails.
And you've found from a staffing perspective, no issues in recruiting people, because there is a general shortage out there, isn't there, of high quality.
It's been hard. I think it's been hard for everyone in every industry, I think.
Yes.
I think, hospitality really was hit quite hard with the pandemic. And we've definitely found, when I advertised for a venue manager a few years ago, I had, 30 applicants, and then I advertised for a venue manager earlier in the year and I had, 4. So it makes you really nervous. It makes you really nervous. What if I can't find someone? What if I can't find the right person? We've been very lucky, and we've got a great team. Many of whom have stuck around. We were able to jump on the hand sanitizer bandwagon during the pandemic, and we were able to keep everyone working. But yeah, it's a challenge. It's a challenge for sure.
Have you still got much hand sanitizer left over?
Just only a couple of boxes left, which I'm really happy about. No one wants it anymore because there's so much out there. It's like the market is completely flooded now. I thought I was never going to get rid of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a moment in time, wasn't it? And
a very small moment.
Very, very small moment. And if you got in at the right time, you did well.
There was a good few weeks where I was dreaming about hand sanitizer. It was the only thing I was thinking about. I was a professional expert in hand sanitizer for the 3 weeks.
What was your special twist on the hand sanitizer? Everyone had their thing that they did with it.
Yeah, we added like a tiny pink blush to the very first batch that we released. It was a pink blush from a bit of hibiscus rosella. So
right.
that was our twist.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
But the great thing about the stuff that distilleries released is that none of it was gel; it was all liquid, and the spray stuff lasts forever. Like I've still got my spray bottle from 2 years ago in my car, and it's still got plenty.
Oh yeah, I've got them everywhere.
Yeah,
everywhere. And I didn't even make the stuff, but I've got them everywhere. So I think so this is episode 40. Congratulations, you are episode 40.
40. Yeah. Woohoo!
You. Very nice. And I think other than Ali, you would be our only female distiller that we've had on.
Yeah.
Is that?
Oh,
hope I'm not missing
gee. Well,
That's-
what about all
that's
the
not-
other women out there?
So that's not representative of the Australian scene, that's for sure.
Yeah.
No. You got to get some more women on.
I know, we do.
Trying.
No,
So,
I'm surprised
So-
that's
I know. I'm not entirely sure how that's worked out.
Mm.
I guess schedules and booking and whatnot. We'll blame that, Crafty. How do you find the industry on a personal level in terms of getting support and mentorship and that sort of a thing? Do you find that there are elements that are a bit of a boys' club, or is that just not a thing?
No, I don't find that at all. That's just my personal experience, because I've read what some other women have written about their experiences, and it's very different. But I mean, when I took over from my dad, he'd set up the distillery so that one person could do everything, and he said to me right from the start, don't let anyone tell you can't do stuff just because you're a woman. You can do this entire production room yourself. I've set it up for you. It was fine. I had a few people from the media actually contact me and say, "Oh, what's your experience? Tell us. Is it hard being a woman?" And I had to say, no, it's not. And I find it very supportive, and not because I'm a woman, but just I think we all are in this industry because we love it, and because everyone's always willing to share their ideas and always up for a chat. I feel totally comfortable calling up the guys at Chief Sun and asking them about their filtration system, and chatting to James down the road about where he got his Pinot Noir for his Pinot rum. And I don't find it intimidating. I don't feel like I'm treated differently as a woman. I mean, when I first started, people would assume that I was the marketer, or like a more female dominant role. But no, and there's women distilling groups out there now. I think there's two. There's
Right.
Women of Australian Distilling. There's a couple of supportive groups. I mean, Kathleen from Nip of Courage, she does incredible things for women in the industry, and she's always supportive and coming up with events and that kind of thing. So I think there's now, and it's different to when I first started and stepped into the role in the industry in 2016. Now there is some great support networks out there for women.
Not a perspective I'm familiar with. So
I remember Ali said something to me one day. She said she's looking forward to the day when someone says she's a distiller. She's not a woman distiller.
Mm.
And
or just assuming that it's Nick.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's not a big deal to us as female distillers, but I guess society, maybe still some in society still find it surprising, and exactly right, they specify that we're female distillers, but we're just doing our job, and
that's it. And probably much better at it in terms of organization, planning, taste, all the things that men are typically bad at.
you might upset some men saying that. Although women are known to be very good multitaskers, aren't they?
That's it. Absolutely.
They are also known to have
multitask for shit.
and very good olfactory senses.
Yes,
women have good olfactory senses. Scientifically, a fact.
Absolutely. So
But everything that we do is subjective. In the spirits industry, when we're coming up with a whiskey blend or a rum blend or a brandy blend, we overlay everything else, not just whether male or female, but what our background is, what our previous jobs were, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. There's so much influence more than just gender.
Yeah.
And everything. Absolutely. Do we want to, Crafty? We haven't done it for a little while.
I don't think he's
right either.
You gonna do it?
I'll do it.
And now it's time for Throw the Todd under the bus.
And now, this
You had all holiday.
little segment gives you a break. It's where we throw Todd under the bus, and he gets to ask some questions, and he's not prepared. So
put a lot of thought in it tonight.
It is always literally throwing, and he has to try and think of a question very, very quickly. And generally, he'll be upset with us because we've already, Crafty and I, obviously, we just talk. We've generally asked all the things that he wanted to ask. Have I padded enough for you, Todd?
I'm still rather blank at the moment, so keep going.
So who are you looking at in the industry at the moment? You said that you've got guys doing rum down the road, you've got brewers down the road and whatnot. Obviously, there's a number of distilleries opening up around Victoria all the time. Who are you looking at as someone doing something quite exciting?
That's a good question. Who am I looking at who's doing something exciting? I mean, I'm watching all the grape wine infused gins coming out, and I mean I like keeping on top of the ideas and the concepts that Four Pillars and Archie Rose are doing. I mean, they're way ahead of the crowd when it comes to marketing and collaborations, and they're doing some great stuff because they're that much bigger. But as far as innovation goes, yeah, I mean, I love what the guys at Never Never have been doing. I love seeing what kind of new creations they come up with and they're releasing. Their focus on flavor and just kind of doing things a little different. I don't know. There's so many to keep an eye on now. I'm following so many on Instagram. I'm quite overwhelmed by all the new products that are coming to market.
There are always a lot, and yeah, it hurts my wallet a lot, and I'm running out of room to put all the things because every time we talk to somebody, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to buy that now, and then I get a delivery, and my wife says, "Did you honestly buy another bottle of something?" Like, no, I didn't. They gave it to me because of the podcast. She doesn't watch, so it doesn't matter. No one tell her.
Those shelves look like they're holding a lot of weight. I hope they're real sturdy.
They are very firmly bolted to the wall. I hope.
Maybe that angry ant bottle will tip it over the edge.
Well, I hope not. I'm actually looking forward to comparing your angry ant to the green ant.
Yep. Very different flavors, but both got ants. Definitely both got ants.
That literally has ants floating around in the bottle too.
Yeah, they do.
Which are bloody hard to get out of the bottle, we discovered.
They are. That's why I've gone through so much of it, because I kept on pouring out water trying to get Nan. That all went into one glass. But I will definitely do a comparison of Anne's.
Yeah.
Just because I can. How'd you go, Todd? You got distracted, didn't you?
I got distracted listening to your question. Well, I guess I don't know if we covered it or not. Where do you see the industry in the next 5 to 10 years as a whole for Australia, I guess? Still vibrant and growing, or starting to get a little bit?
I think we've got a lot of growth still to come. I think we'll see some of the kind of small to medium-sized distilleries get even bigger, and we'll see many more of the kind of small boutique husband and wife duo distilleries popping up, creating kind of very uniquely local spirits. I think as far as trends go, we're all on the edge of our seat waiting for more tequila to come to the market. I think that's the next big thing. I think that's going to be really exciting. I'm hoping that brand is going to start to take off, and that's going to get real popular, and we're going to try our best to help more Australians fall in love with brandy again. But yeah, I think given the international imports still vastly dominate many of the bars and the restaurants where all spirits are served, I think that there's so much more work we as an industry have to do to convince more Australians to drink local and to support local. And so I hope that in the next kind of 5 years, that message will start to cut through a lot more, even just with more distilleries popping up, more awareness of Aussie craft spirits as a better switch from imports. I hope that that's the way that the industry is going to go.
And is that what you think the industry as a whole needs to do in the next sort of 5 to 10 years? They need to improve the marketing or improve the story behind Australian spirits versus the imports? What do you see the industry needing to do?
I think with more awareness of how much value the craft spirits industry adds to Australia and the economy and jobs, there's so much that distilleries are adding in value and have the potential to add, but at the moment, we're really restricted by excise. The ever increasing excise, and I think if there are more distilleries and there's more interest in supporting local, it might mean that politicians are going to start to listen to what we need. The industry is still in its infancy. I think there's so much more that can be done around the rigor of training and safety, and more information out there, the better, to support these new distilleries starting up, because a lot of us kind of had to feel our way and bounce ideas off other distillers and work it out. And so, I think with more volume of distilleries, the more likely the greater public is going to get behind us and support us and help us grow and take over some of those imports.
Yeah, right. And the other side of it too is Australia pushing out internationally more too, isn't it? The export, a big drive on export.
Absolutely, and I think we've seen the likes of Karoo and Never Never, Four Pillars winning international awards. I think that the world is really, really starting to take notice of what we're putting out there. And for us, we're out to prove that Australian brandy can be some of the best in the world, as can gin. And the only way to do that is to send our products overseas and get more people falling in love with Australian spirits.
Mm-hmm. So how many brandy distillers are there in Australia now? It must be a very small number,
yes.
Certainly in comparison to whiskey and gin.
I've just in speaking to some other distillers over the last kind of years, I know that there's going to be more brandy being released to market. I know that, I mean, it makes sense, those in the Barossa Valley, those on the Mornington Peninsula, those in wine regions, it makes total sense. I don't think there's many. I don't know exactly, but I was at the Australian Distilled Spirits Awards judging few weeks ago now, and I was taking note of how many submissions there were in brandy, and I think there was about 15 or so, which is more than there was last year, which is much more than there was the year before. And by comparison, in the gin category, there was 350 or so. So, but 15 brandies, to me that's a lot. That tells me that that area is growing, and it's kind of a watch this space. There's going to be brandies being released after they've matured in the coming years.
Did you get to try many of those for the judging?
I didn't get to try the brandy. No, I was put on the gin panel. I would have loved to have tried the brandy.
Okay.
I think it's a conflict of interest. Although, yeah, it would have been a conflict of interest because for the gin, I'm sure they had to declare my interests, and they split the category across many different panels, and they would have given me not my gins.
Right. Was your brandy in the mix?
It was in the mix. So it definitely would have been a conflict of interest.
How did you do?
I don't know yet. We don't know.
Right,
we haven't got the results yet. I think they'll be out. I think it's the 16th of October when the awards night is.
Yeah, not too far away then.
Yeah.
That will be interesting.
Yes.
You're quietly gunning for top billing though, aren't you?
I'm hoping. And another thing that I've got in the works early next year, I'm heading over to Cognac to do a 6-week internship. So my goal is definitely to learn as much as I possibly can and keep improving our brandy. That's my dog in the background. Working hard to keep learning in that space and keep innovating and keep trying new things.
Beautiful dog.
This is Remy. He's named Remy after Remy Martin. Here he is.
We don't get enough dogs on the podcast.
What's your thoughts on Armagnac?
I love Armagnac. Armagnac is stunning. You can tell it's got a real story behind it. It's like a rustic, much more kind of, just an interesting character to it when you compare it to Cognac. Cognac is very refined, very clean, and then you've got this big, bold Armagnac. There's nothing else like it.
Yeah, I remember tasting a 40-year-old Armagnac, and I was just amazed how grassy it was, and just how fresh it was.
Yeah. And I love the history behind it. They used to have these roving stills on wheels, and they just wheel them from winery to winery and distill that winery's grapes and then go to the next one. It's got this incredible history behind it as well. We actually, on our 300 litre pot still that we had made, so our pot still was designed in France, manufactured in South Africa, and then shipped over here and put together. And that was because the master distiller who came out, he was South African, even though he trained with Remy Martin. But we also had a second hat and a second set of condensers made for the pot still that we still got, and I haven't had a chance to play with. And actually, I might have a chance to play with now that we can retire our 300 litre pot still and start working with Cognac still. Might mean that I can set up the Armagnac hat. I've got kind of a small set of columns and a very different looking condenser that is supposed to be able to just get switched over from the Morse cap that we've currently got on there. So that could be further down the line for us too one day. Who knows?
Yeah, all the unexplored possibilities.
Yes.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we've almost hit the hour and a half mark.
Yeah.
Do we want to? Are there any other questions from those watching before we wrap it up? It's going to take them a little while to type. I think most of our audience are two-finger typers like Crafty. So we should probably give them a minute. Maybe. No. All right. We'll wrap it up there. We need new sponsors. I think we've hit our 12 months for our sponsors. So if anybody is interested in sponsoring the show, please feel free to hit us up, and we'll be reaching out soon because this doesn't pay for itself. It would be lovely if it did, or at least covered some of the costs. But anyway, the joys of technology. Please do like and subscribe, follow on Facebook. We do have an Instagram that I occasionally put something up on because I think I cut Crafty out of it at one point. But yeah, do get on there. Please jump on the website where we are on every different major podcast and streaming service to get the episodes and see all the whole back catalogue. This was episode 40, which I think is quite an amazing feat for us that we made it this far. Thank you very much, Holly, for joining us. It's been really interesting. I'm looking forward to tasting some ant pheromone.
You're very welcome. Enjoy the gin, and thank you for inviting me on your show.
No worries.
Thank you, Holly. We appreciate it, and it was quite a technical one. It was good.
Yeah, and very, very interesting. And the only brandy distiller that we've had on so far.
There you go. There you go. There'll be more. I'm sure there'll be more, and there'll be more women as well, right?
Indeed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that'll be our challenge for our goal for this next 12-month period. It should be overwhelmingly women, I think.
Love it. Love it.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And
who's up next week? Who's up next time?
Oh, shit.
Well, TBA.
All right.
So does that mean you know who you booked, but you haven't confirmed?
No, I know. I've got to do some confirming.
No, it's next week.
Hey, it's next week. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we've done for some reason. We normally do it every second week, Holly. For some reason, we've slipped in a couple of back-to-back weeks.
Fantastic. Yeah, you've done that a couple of times to me.
Yeah. All right.
We particularly like the ones that are overseas that keep us up to midnight.
Oh, yeah, they're good. Yeah, they're awesome.
Great.
He'll do it. We can say. And then he'll force him into it.
So, go on.
All good.
Well, no. Okay. What about the one in 2 weeks? No, 3 weeks.
TBA.
All right. We've got more episodes coming up. Stay tuned. We'll eventually know who we're talking to. And if we're talking to anybody at all.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening. And buy some brandy.
Thanks again, Holly.
Thanks. Bye.
I'm going to put the website up one more time before oh, shit, where have I put it? There it is. Hit up the website, buy some brandy, buy some gin, and support local. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.